Welcome back into the studio. Now in episode 1, part 1 of this short video series on YouTube, I showed you and explained why I used gouache for the underlayer in this pastel drawing. Okay, so if you want to look at all the details of that, I'll put the link for part 1 below this video. It's really worth checking out. And on this video, let's look at the next layer, and this is going to be done with pan pastels. Now that first layer is completely dry, and I'm just using some scrap pastel matte paper to test my colours out on. It's got to be the same coloured paper as what the drawing is for it to work, otherwise it just doesn't work. And I've got a 45-minute video free on YouTube showing how I mix and match colours and use those types of techniques, and I go into it really in depth, of course, on my Patreon art channel as well. But the whole idea of the first layer, which I did with gouache paint, is so those spots will stay in place. Okay, they're not going to smudge, they're not going to move around, and they're now not going to contaminate any of the lighter pan pastel that I'm putting on top. So that's making the second layer, this undertone, really easy and fast to do, because this is only a small section of a much larger drawing. The whole leopard and some of the foliage underneath is included. It's 26 inches wide, so really large. Now you could of course do something like this all with pastel pencils, but of course it would take a lot longer and you'd use a heck of a lot of your pencils and wear them out. Pan pastel, it goes a long way and the pans last a long time. So pan pastels really are a very cost efficient way of putting in the first layer especially. So basically my pan pastels are off to the right hand side of the screen. I've stuck the holder there with a large magnet, okay, so I can just go back and forth, and I've got some printer paper, regular inkjet paper, just cheap stuff that I'm coming from the pans, mixing the colour that I want, just like I would mix with paints. So obviously there's no liquid involved, but I'm dipping in one colour of pans and the next colour of pans, mixing them to the required colour and tonal value that I want. By putting it onto the printer paper, that's helping to take any excess off. Then I'm applying that to the pastel mat, as you can see on screen. Now pan pastels are not completely opaque. They're not in fact very opaque, as you can see. I'm putting a fair amount of pastel down, not lots of it. Okay, I'm not filling the tooth of the paper up, but I'm putting, you know, an amount down, and you can still see the spots extremely easily through it. So it's not an opaque pastel. That's so beneficial, as you can imagine, at this stage. By being able to put this colour down, I'm creating that underlayer. You can already see it starting to take shape even after just a few moments. I'm putting highlights where they're needed, a bit darker where that's needed, but you can still see the spots through it. Now imagine if I'd done those spots with pastel, I wouldn't be able to do this technique at all. So this is greatly speeding up that underlayer process. Now a wonderful thing with pan pastels, all the colours blend and merge together, so I can create a really smooth area like the background, which I'll work on later. I can also make marks with the pastel, so I can create a fur texture, nothing too detailed, but I can create a texture with it. So it's got lots of various uses. Now up in this section you can see I've just added some warm brown. Colours don't need to be really accurate. I'm going to be refining on top, but it's worth trying to get them quite close. You can imagine this leopard is in evening or morning sunshine. A different type of day, a different type of sunrise or sunset would give us very different colours on the leopard. So that's why it's not essential for the colours to be perfection. most people are not going to see the reference photo to judge it against the drawing, because if you're trying to create absolute photographic realism, so it looks as close as humanly possible to the reference photo, this drawing, which is probably going to take me 15 hours or so to do, would probably take me 40 hours to do, because I'd have to be much more careful with my color choices. The most important part to get this drawing to look pretty good and real looking, to have the leopard looking like a three-dimensional form on a flat piece of paper, is the tonal values, the lights and the darks. And when I'm saying darks, I'm not talking about the spots, I'm talking about how perhaps that bridge of the nose is darker than the light haze over the eyes. That's what I'm talking about, the things that's giving it the structure and the form. That's the highlights, the shadows and the mid-tones. That's the parts that we really need to get exactly right, rather than the colours. So I'm going to continue with this technique. You can see I'm using the pan pastel tool most of the time in the third direction, but with a subject this large, I'm going to be putting lots of details on top. You may see me go in, you know, just circular motions or just filling in really. So to save us a bit of time, I'm going to speed up sections as I do on most of my videos, so you don't have to sit through 15 hours worth of this. Remember, I'm just trying to show you the technique, give you the tools so you can have the knowledge really, so you can draw anything you want. Okay, that's always my goal, my objective with my lessons, to give you the knowledge so you're confident in drawing what inspires you, because you may just love doing flowers all the time, or you may love doing lions and not leopards, or elephants. So it's great to have the technique, and once you've got the techniques, you can do anything you want. Okay, so a bit of a color change now, tonal change. I'm going to start working on the nose. I'm going to pop a new tip onto my soft tool. Okay, they just pull over onto the top like that. Got to be a bit careful with them, they're a little bit fragile. So that's how they go on. What I generally do, I've got say 2 or 3 of these on the go at one time, so I'll have one for the mid-tone, one for the light and one for the dark. That means I don't have to keep cleaning them. I clean them just by giving them a wipe on a microfiber cloth, but you really want to kind of separate and keep, like I said, one for darks, one for lights at the minimum. You know, keep 2 going, because if you're using the dark one then going to light, you have got to stop and clean it, and you're contaminating as well. So I like to keep 2 on the go. You see, I use generally these small circular type motions. Don't push too hard. Now, pastel matte paper has got that soft, or it's not soft, but a velvety type of surface to it when you touch it, compared to most sanded papers, which are basically sand on a paper. If you use pan pastels with those, it just rips the surface of the tool pretty much immediately. Pastel matte also will degrade these tools fairly quickly, but nowhere near as quick as the sanded papers. If you push really hard and you're scrubbing with it, they're not going to last hardly any time at all. So always gentle pressure, but don't expect them to last forever. I only generally get probably 2 drawings or so out of a tip. A drawing this size, maybe 1 drawing. So you do have to replace them. Okay, so now you can see that tonal value change when you squint, and I do this often looking at the reference photo. You blur your eyes a bit, it takes the details away. So now we're thinking more about what's important, the general tonal value, the lights and the darks. That's what I'm thinking about. Another way of doing it is having your reference photo, put it in your image editor and hit the Gaussian blur. It's usually filter, blur, Gaussian blur. is under those headings, and just drag the slider so you lose all the detail but you keep all of the tonal values. That stops you concentrating on the detail at this stage. Don't want to be thinking of details right now. And also, I'm not really thinking of extreme darks yet either. Make sure you watch the video all the way through, or at least this head section, to see how I come back with more refinement and I start adding my darks with the pencils. So when I'm starting to put the detail on, you see it on that bridge of the nose going up in towards the eyes, and where the teardrop markings are under the eyes. You'll see me do that with pencils instead. Okay, so that'll be a texturizing layer, but at the moment I'm thinking about just kind of sculpting that foam. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the pan pastel layer. That's my base, and on top of that now I can work all my details and texture as well using pastel pencils, and that will come in part 3. As well as all the lessons I've got here free on YouTube, I've got hundreds and hundreds of hours of full-length lessons over on my Patreon art channel if you'd like to check those out. Got probably about 1,400 members learning over there right now. Hope to see you there real soon.